This is possibly an over-recorded cassette. I cannot tell. I only know it appears to be empty on both sides. So I'm using it because these things are darn hard to come by. I've decided to put down a few things here. Do you remember when your dad and I were about to separate that I had a place for you to go in Chatham while I worked? And I told you about how you'd spend the day there, and then you'd have your dinner, then you'd have a nap, and then you'd get up and play, and then you'd look up the street and see me coming from work, and then we'd hop on the bus and go home. A lot of people think I just went away and left you with Aunt Frances and Uncle Carmen, but as far as I'm concerned, they stole you because they did not get in touch with me at all, ever. Secondly, I'm putting down an incident here that nobody almost knows about, done by your father at Wabash. And I took his word for it that it was an accident. But I'd come to the conclusion it was no accident. That possibly it was the result of this thing I've been fighting against all my life that upsets everything, and in this place is interfering in everything I try to do, everything I have to do, and everything seemingly that the world is doing. Now you can think what you want to about that, but when I tell you what happened at Wabash, you may change your mind. I don't know. I don't know whether to blame your dad very much or not, except that he was the instrument used to perpetuate this business. One day I put you in your little metal buggy that was very noisy to start with and took you for a walk along the road down towards Cairns. Now that was noisy on that road, and your dad back at the house must have heard us. He must have known where we were. I got down to in front of Cairns and heard what I thought was a bird zooming over my head. Then I realized, no, it was a bullet. So I turned around, and there was your dad back at the back door, our back door, with the rifle in his hand. He had just fired a shot. Well, I went back immediately, and he said, he didn't say he was sorry, he didn't laugh or anything. There was no response other than, oh, I was shooting sparrows. He didn't look sorry, he didn't look anything except that, whoops, he failed in what he was trying to do. This is what makes me think partly that he knew what he was doing and had no business doing it. But as I say, he might have been under the influence of this other thing that has done nothing but trounce me, belittle me, etc. all my life. It was never discussed. I said sort of laughingly, you don't need to shoot, I'll leave. But I went back in the house, did not go for more walk that day. Now you can look at this as though it was all his doing, or he was under the influence of this other thing that never left me alone. If you knew all the stuff I have to put up with these days, you would understand a little better maybe. The main thing I have to put up with is that the minute I get something done, the next day I go near it and it's all a mess again. It's as if something has deliberately upset all my work overnight. And I'm beginning to think it has to do with two different worlds or something, that a person can be possibly two different people living in two different worlds. And so of course everything you do is going to be wrong for a lot of the time, or upset. And this is why people used to think I was strange and a little odd. Well, I didn't. To me, the world was going along as it should, except everything was jumping on me. I was to blame for everything. There were a couple of other incidents that your father was really mean in. It happened back when the Boyle girls were having an engagement party. This is for 2 or 3 of them getting married at once. Be Bessie and Edna and so on. And I was very interested in going to see their place. And your dad and I got all dressed up. I was 7 months pregnant. And the minute he turned off the ignition switch, he said, "Okay, you're on your own." I was horrified. I burst into tears, and I never cried. I wasn't a crier. But there was nothing I could do about it. And he snorted and put the car on again, and we went home. And your dad never wanted to be seen with me when I was pregnant. But I realize now that what he said came out exactly when he touched the ignition to turn it off. In other words, when he used his right hand. And I now realize that a lot of the stupid things I heard, mean things I heard him say, seemed to be coming from his right side. And he apparently had no left. That was the meanest thing your father could have done. I was really hurt. There I was, really looking forward to this. The world was his. He was damn well free of me for one evening. He was going to stay free of me. And that was it. You see, I had to fight this in him all the time. He was never wanting to be with me. They thought he was Mr. Perfect. And who was I to leave such a perfect dude as that? Well, he wasn't perfect. Well, I met Bert out at Wabash, but I was, what, 20, close to 21. And the one thing I cannot explain, except it was something wrong with Bert. They might say today that he was autistic. He would never look me in the face. No eye contact for 4.5 years. I've heard of one other person like that. No eye contact after we were married. But I could have done a lot better. I must admit that now. But to have no eye contact for 4.5 years with the person you were living with was a bit odd. But to tell the truth, it didn't sink in as it should have. It would now. I'd probably whack him on the shoulder and say, "Look at me." That's what happened anyway, and we split up. And because I left, then I couldn't have Ann, of course. And everybody thought the worst of me. Oh, I was the bad one, always. The Blakeleys were pure as snow. I don't know why I was never allowed anybody that I was equipped to live with, that I would have enjoyed living with. It just seemed that everybody else did what they wanted to, but I never could. And I blamed people. Now I know it's not people. Now I know it goes far beyond that. So the basic thing wrong with my life was that I insisted on living alone.